many of them refused to come to work at that location on another day. They just wouldn't come back. And there was also a strange incident occurring at the same time. A large wrecking ball accidentally hit part of the newer section of the hospital, and it didn't do any damage, but it was a frightening experience. And the old rectory where Robbie had stayed a few times during his exorcism is said to have glowed brightly just before Robbie was finally released from the demon's hold. And up until that time, the old Alexian Hospital closed its doors. Rumors circulated about the strange patient that had encountered in 1949. Workers frequently reported how that part of the hospital where Robbie stayed seemed very cold, and there was often heard a kind of demonic laughter coming from the room.
Wow.
So now that I don't think was ever in the movie or anything. So
no, and why didn't they portray in the movie how it really happened? Why didn't they use the location?
I think maybe they thought it was more Hollywoody this way. I mean, the movie that it's more interesting to have something in Washington D.C. than in someplace in the Midwest. That's all I can think of. I'm with you though. I think it would have been more interesting to have the whole thing done realistically, but.
Now, during your research of your book, did you come across any newspaper files from that era that related any of the stories that were told about the hospital prior to or just after its demolition?
There were some old newspaper files that I did find. I think they were on the internet, and I think Vicki did find some other stuff too that was squirreled away somewhere. I forget where she found it, but it's not just from one source. I mean, this is pretty well documented. What I've been telling you.
Were you able to get any confirmation from the church pertaining to the actual exorcism that was performed by the members of the clergy?
Yeah. What did you ask? I didn't hear what you said about the church.
I was asking you if you were able to get any information from the church about the...
Oh, they won't tell you because it's considered a privacy issue. It's like if you were a drug addict and you recovered, unless you volunteer the information to the public, your doctor probably would not do it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So how do you...
Along those lines.
So how do you authenticate a story like this?
There are people, they had, I believe, I wish I could think of the number. They had, I want to say it's 45, it was some huge number of people that signed documents that said that what they saw was definitely supernatural. They, it just had not fit in with their reference to anything else they'd ever seen or anything. It just... totally, and these were everything but clergy to ordinary people to psychics to, they had a conglomeration of everything, that signed this. And it was signed, it's got an official title, I can't think of it, but it's, the church uses it, like to verify something. And this particular case really had a ton of people signing up on it. That they had seen all kinds of strange things. So
as the author of The Exorcist House, were you able to talk to any of the people who were actually there, or have they all passed on?
They're all, Father Halloran and Father Bodern and Father Bishop are all dead now. But it's interesting, Vicki talked to a couple of them before they died, because she actually lives in St. Louis. I used to live there and moved away, but she's been there for a number of years, and she had talked to... She knew somebody that, I think Father Halloran was a teacher of one of her friends' brothers or sisters.
Right.
And so she knew something about him, and she knew Father Bodern some other way. I can't remember. She explained this all to me. She had contact with him, and it just it's Father Bodern. It was sort of like the head guy. He was the one that corresponded to the old man with the glasses and the white hair in the movie. You know, the one that you saw that was overseas when they showed the demon in Iraq or somewhere. That's how it began, that this demon was setting out to do something, Anyhow, that was Father Bodern. And so she checked up on all these people, and they have all since gone. Now, one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but one of them actually came here and taught at Creighton, here in Omaha, Creighton University, and that's a Jesuit school, by the way. And so there's a connection, that way, too. But they never talked about it. There was only one of the three priests that actually talked much, and he didn't want to say too much, because, like I say, it's an invasion of privacy. The church sees it that way. Unless a person volunteers it, like I say, it's like, if you're getting over drug addiction or something else, you probably wouldn't want everybody talking about it. Now, the man that, the Robbie Doe,
yes,
he has never, somebody got to him and talked to him. I can't remember who it was, but he has never had any more paranormal involvement of any kind. He was baptized into the Catholic Church, he joined the church, and his whole family joined. They were so impressed with what had happened, that they all joined. And he's been a practicing Catholic ever since. I know he has 3 children of his own, and he lives back east. And that's all that I was able to find out. But, that's enough. But apparently it stayed exercised,
So tell me, what was it that prompted you to write this story?
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting. I worked on a newspaper about 50 miles from where I live now. This is like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, actually. And this woman came up to me, and I had done a ghost story for Halloween, and she asked if I wrote it, and I said yes. And she told me that she lived in a haunted house in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that there was a person that haunted the house, that was haunting the house, that was a child of a couple that lived there. The father was a professor there, and when he and his mother sold the house and were going to move to Kansas, he got so upset he committed suicide. And she said that this kid was haunting the house, but she said it was very strange because there was nothing bad about it. She said she got actually attached to the ghost. She got very sympathetic with him. She didn't want to leave him. When her husband was being promoted and offered another job out of state, she didn't want to leave because she was attached to this ghost. So apparently ghosts don't always, scare you. Sometimes it's you can become attached to them even.
Why do you think it's only certain people that have encounters with ghosts?
What did you say? I didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry.
I said, why do you think that only certain people have encounters with ghosts and not everyone does?
Well, first of all, if you absolutely, close your mind to it or you don't believe in that sort of thing, then usually you won't attract it. You see what I'm saying? But if you are open to such things, and some people are, or let's say you have somebody like a ghost and they're in a situation like this woman where her husband was being transferred and the ghost had been in a household where this had happened and it had upset the family. So maybe the ghost felt that she would be receptive. That's the only thing I can think of.
Now, I have to ask you this as a sensible person. If you had a ghost in your house and your husband was promoted and you were going to move, can you see yourself really staying behind for a ghost?
Not me, no. Not me, but I imagine I've never lived in a house with a ghost, so I've never become attached to one. Although I will tell you, my parents lived in a haunted house for about 40 years, and when they were gone at night, sometimes they would be working or they'd be doing something else, and they'd be out of the house, I would hear footsteps upstairs. I would, just hear noises, hear people walking upstairs or going up and down the stairs or things. And it never bothered me, and it never did anything violent or never upset me or anything. And so I just sort of, didn't pay that much attention to it. And I think there's probably a lot of people that are the same way. And you have an old house, and people say, "Oh yeah, well it settles. The house settles
Sure.
and it makes noises, and So you just tend not to think about it unless it's bothering you."
I was just thinking about that lady who didn't want to move because of the ghost. Why couldn't she take the ghost with her?
Well, I think sometimes that does happen. Somebody told me, I told them about that one time, and they said there was actually a case where it did follow them or something to that effect. So apparently it does,
I've heard many stories of people who go to flea markets or antique shops and buy buy furniture that apparently is haunted, and they bring this entity into the house with them.
Yeah, see, the longer something is around, let's say an antique, okay? The longer that antique's been around, the more people have left their vibrations on it,
right,
and have become attached to it or like it, and so the better your chances are of attracting somebody that liked that, see? And that's the only thing I can think of, why some things seem to...
You kind of cut out on us for a second there, so...
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Now I can, yeah.
Am I okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, is that the vibrations from the person are on the antique, and you're attracted to it, and you take it home with you,
Any new books coming up?
More than you bought.
Do you have any new books?
Have any more?
Yeah. New books.
Well, the one that is going to be, it was an ebook, and it's going to come out as a regular book, but it's called Strange Animals and the Implications for Their Existence. And it's really amazing. A friend of mine is kind of a world traveler, and he was telling me about all these things. And there was this one thing that it's in the eel family, and they had very few people that had ever seen one because they'd been killed if they'd seen it. If they got close enough to actually see it, they were dead. And it was just absolutely gigantic, huge. And people in our military didn't believe it. They thought it was a story because this happened over in Asian countries. And since the Air Force has been given permission to fly over these areas where this used to happen, they have actually seen this thing, and they say, yes, it's for real.
Wow. Stand by,
so
Patricia. You and
verified.
we have to take our final break for this hour. X-Zone Nation, Patricia Ress is my guest. www.patricia. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.